My name is Kiel Johnson. I am a Los Angeles-based artist. One of the things I like to do is to instigate these communal group projects where everybody gets to do a little something and it all comes together to make a bigger, beautiful thing.
I was recently at a 1 day intensive where I was talking to this guy about all the things I'm doing in Art to Life, which is, it's my painting, it's teaching, and they were like, what is the one thing that you don't, that's super important, that forget about whether, it's the most profitable or whatever. And it's these workshops that I started doing years ago, just with, just showing up, what can happen in 4 or 5 days. And I just absolutely love it. And I still do them. It's the whole thing for me. So I completely get it, and everyone gets to know each other. And some people have done art before, some people haven't. It's so accessible.
That's a very good point when you say people get to know each other. I grew up with a mom and a grandmother who were always quilting, around a table, quilting groups. So I kind of grew up seeing this, it was always women, but I just grew up with this, group of women all working on the same thing, chatting and talking. And that I try to get that. I try to tell people I'm after that quilting bee mentality, where we're all around a table working on something. If we were at a bar, we'd be talking about something. If we went on a hike, we'd have one conversation. If we were sitting in your family room or right here on Zoom. But if you and I sat down with some scissors and glue, we would have a whole different conversation throughout the day. And it's not that it's not that it's a better conversation, but it's just a different kind of bonding that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Making art with friends. It's, that's how I describe it. And it's the backbone of all I've had so many fun. And I like going to new places because, people see different things and they put things together. You're just mixing it up.
Yeah, that's another good point, is the travel aspect. I've been all around the world, literally, a couple times, specifically with the TED organization or with different schools and universities that have invited me. But it's just, just making stuff with people. It's amazing.
So do you come up with the project idea and like, because I love what you just described. You're doing a project, but here's a question. Now you guys answer it in this way. Is that how you kind of work? Will you create that?
I do. While I have done some projects multiple times, I try to just do something new every time. That keeps it fresh for me. And then I don't feel like I'm becoming the Conestoga wagon guy, or, this is the guy that always makes masks with people, or, so just because I want to make fresh new pieces, I'm always trying to come up with a new concept, and that'll be based on the group that invites me, the history of that area, the whatever I'm kind of working on at the time. A lot of times, one project, while I'm doing that project, I realize, or I see something in that project that sparks like, okay, I'm going to do this next time. It's going to be a little different. And an example of that would be with 200 people in Orange County, I built pretty much a full-size airplane. And
oh my God.
And that's on my website too. But it was great. Everything you'd expect this like airplane had, except for when it came to the cockpit. I just kept telling people we want gauges and dials and buttons and levers and switches and and they would pile it up on this table, and then I slowly would build the composition of this cockpit. And I realized there that the energy was in the cockpit. Like people, there was always somebody that was like, I want to work on the wing, or I'll work on the propeller, or I'll work on the engine compartment. But really what people were having the most fun at and where their creativity was coming out was the cockpit. So then I told myself, the next time I get asked to do something like this, I'm going to pitch this like giant cockpit, like a B-2 bomber or like a Millennium Falcon. And so I did. I showed up at another arts high school a year later, and I built this giant, like a cockpit to an airplane that would have 4 seats. And we just, with about 300 kids, we just built all. There was gauges monitoring every aspect of their lives. There was just. I can't even remember, some of the good ones right now, but there was just a lot of beautiful things happening, and it was all revolving around just creating this cockpit. And then we did a green screen kind of thing in front of it so that they could sit in there. That's another thing is I try to bring the analog. I'm not the most tech guy, but I try to. I have a lot of friends that are. So I try to always, if we're going to build 50 robot suits, then I try to get some friends to help me make a movie. Like if we're going to have all these kids dressed up as cardboard robots, I can't just take a picture and walk away. So there's a video on my site that you may or may not have watched, but it is that. I got invited to build robot suits. Actually, I just got invited to do something with some students. I had just built a robot suit for a Halloween project for myself. I saw it on the floor. I thought, if I take this apart and everybody traces these pieces, they can pretty much be covered in cardboard fairly quickly. And if you're bigger than me, you might have to add a little bit. If you're shorter than me, you might have to cut a little bit off. And then all of a sudden, this magic thing happened where I had, literally 50 cardboard robots, all unique.
Oh my God.
And then I called some friends that had a post-production company, and I said, you guys are going to be able to get a portfolio piece out of this. We've got all these robots. This university is willing to. They shut down basketball for the day so we could have the gym for our set.
Oh my God.
And we filmed this, this movie that you could watch on my site. That's kind of like the year 3011. Cardboard. It's like robot prom is what it is. It's like the prom night for like a robot community. It's really bizarre, but the idea is, the thing I'm trying to get across is that I just went to a project that I didn't really want to do, started working with these kids. This magical thing happened. We made this movie. It was actually in some film festivals. And it was that moment that I just realized the power of working with others. I've always been a team player, or like to do things with other people, but it was that cardboard robot project that I just saw the possibilities of how you could inspire others, you could make something cool, you could work together, and I learned more from them. And I'm sure you do that too when you do workshops. You learn more from them. Sometimes you leave there thinking like selfishly, like, wow, I got more out of this than they did,
For those of you who are new here, we have an amazing free Art to Life Artists Facebook group. Tons of cool stuff going on in there. You can click on the link below. Everyone's welcome, and there's all kinds of stuff. You can learn from other people, and it's a whole world. So please come and join us, and I hope to see you real soon. Thank you. Hey everyone, if you found this helpful, I have a whole lot more to teach, share, and inspire you with every single week. So join the Art to Life YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button below. Okay, let's do this. Awesome.